Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to Hyde Park this afternoon. And thanks, of course, to Alexandra Daisy Ginsburg for accepting the invitation to have a conversation here in the park about the Pollinator Pathmaker project, this extraordinary project which we will continue with the Serpentine and the Royal Parks. It's a long durational project. We're going to talk about that later. We feel that it's very important as an art institution to think about la longue durée, about what Fernand Braudel called la longue durée, about long durational projects, to go beyond event culture and think about projects which can, have longer duration. That is, of course, reflected in so many artist practices right now, artists who work on gardens, like you do. We can also mention, of course, Precious Okoyomon, and many artists these days work on this idea of the garden as a medium. We have also many artists working on farms. Of course, Gianfranco Baruchello has been doing it for a long time. More recently, Inka Shonibare, with whom we're going to work at the Serpentine in spring, has started a farming project in Nigeria. Otobong Nekanga, also Adrian Villarojas, and many more. So this idea of farms and gardens bringing in another time horizon, which is not the time horizon of an event or of an exhibition. Together with Bettina Korek, our CEO at the Serpentine, and all our teams, we're incredibly excited to revisit today with Alexandra Daisy Ginsburg, the Pollinator Pathmaker, a collaboration with the Royal Park. And as mentioned, the long-term dimension of this project makes it part of Back to Earth, which is our long-term environmental initiative to address the climate emergency. It's not only a project about the climate emergency, but it's hopefully also a catalyst for change, and climate change is here to actually, and we have to transform society and reach climate safety. And in order to do so, we need, new strategies, also new artistic strategies. And that has been at the very core of Alexandra Daisy Ginsburg practice for a long time. And for us from the beginning, it was clear that we wanted to collaborate. We also collaborated on the book, Remember Nature. But it's a dream come true that we can have for many years here this Pollinator Pathmaker experiment. It's a really one-of-a-kind experiment in interspecies art. It's also exciting that actually a twin project has just opened in Berlin to this garden here at the Natural History Museum. So for those of you who will be in Berlin in the future, you can experience it there. And of course, for both projects, you worked with horticulturalists at the Eden Project in Cornwall, with pollinator scientists, with experts, to really curate a database of plants that supports pollinator populations local to the side of the artwork. So in this sense, it's of course a very, very different project in Berlin than it is here, and we hopefully going to hear about it from you more. It was also fascinating before when I asked you, because we looked at the garden, and I pass by the garden very often in the morning when I go jogging, so I very often see how many bees and bumblebees and pollinators actually interact. And I was asking you, if they do have a preference. And the interesting thing is that there are only plants here the pollinators prefer. So they're all preferred plants of the pollinator. It's an amazing work. It's a very multidisciplinary work, and that is very much at the core, of course, of your practice also with synthetic aesthetics. For those of you who are not familiar with the book, I recommend this book very much. Alexandra Daisy Ginsburg's book, Synthetic Aesthetics, Investigating Synthetic Biology's Design on Nature. It's published by MIT Press. Then in 2014, actually. Then in 2017, there is the PhD Better at the Royal College of Art, where you actually interrogated how powerful dreams of better futures shape the present. So these are a couple of references to literature if you want to know more about the work. And of course, I also want to mention here that recently the Pollinator Pathmaker has been awarded the S&T Arts Grand Prix, Grand Prize for Artistic Exploration. It's a large-scale initiative of the European Commission, and many congratulations to you on this amazing award. So now before we start, please join me in giving Alexandra Daisy Ginsburg a very warm welcome. And I wanted to kind of begin with the beginning and ask you a little bit about the conception of the project and how you kind of arrived at the idea of creating a living artwork for pollinators, and maybe also how it evolved out of some previous of your works, which in a similar way had very much a long-term perspective, no?
So I think we should also thank the pollinators. Can everyone hear me? Okay, yeah. So we need to thank the pollinators and the plants who are here as well.
We should applaud them.
Because it's strange, they're actually the audience, so we're watching them, and they're very much part of this. So the work began with a commission or an invitation to work with the Eden Project in Cornwall, which is an ecological attraction. And they wanted me to bring attention to the jeopardy facing pollinators. So the insects that we rely on to pollinate our crops and our ecosystems, and numbers are falling dramatically. So in Germany, for example, 75% decline by volume of flying insects in the last 30 years. So it's a crisis caused by pesticides and habitat change and climate change. But I thought it was nuts to make something about pollinators outdoors, and it would be more interesting to make something for them. So I proposed making an artwork for pollinators, and then I had to figure out what that actually meant. And this is the result. So I started looking at how insects see the world. How can we put ourselves in the perspective of other organisms and ask how they might enjoy art and what art is for them? So this is an outdoor talk, so all the elements are joining us. So I proposed making an algorithm to actually design the gardens or living artworks so that my aesthetic choices didn't get in the way. And the project was conceived in April 2020, just at the beginning of the pandemic. And it seemed important to me that as we were all locked in our homes and seeking access to nature, that there was a way to think about moving beyond that. So the web tool that's part of it, which I think we're going to talk about more, sort of came out of that idea as well. So how can it not just be one artwork? How can we think about a multiplicity of connected artworks?
And we just opened the exhibition, for those of you who haven't seen it yet, of Gabriel Massan and collaborators at the North Gallery. And of course, that work with technology, it's a video game, which also connects very much to environment. And it's actually very much part, we can say, of our entire season. I was actually thinking if it would start to rain. I remember once many years ago we did a talk in the rain. It was like in this Marcel Brotas film, the notes all of a sudden, started to get blurry and the ink and everything. And I was just saying that our summer season has really a theme this year. If you think about the Gabriel Massan project with the many collaborators, about the Thomas Saraceno show, the pavilion, your garden, it all has to do with what Alexis Pauline Gams says so beautifully, that we have the opportunity now as a species fully in touch with each other to unlearn and relearn our own patterns of thinking and storytelling in a way that allows us to be actually in communion with our environment, as opposed to a dominating colonialist separation from the environment. And in a way, what these projects also have in common is that they have to do with communion also in terms of collaborative communion, no? And this is a very collaborative project. It's a collaboration between you and the plants and the pollinators, but also collaboration between you and many scientists, specialists in different fields. So I wanted to ask you to tell us a little bit about the Pollinator Pathmaker edition as a collaboration.
So we're collaborating with the rain as well. It's a project about the natural environment. So I'm not a gardener, and I think it's really important to state that I've come to this as an amateur. And the joy in my practice is talking to experts and asking them questions and coming as an outsider to their practice to creatively collaborate with them. So the garden, or living artwork, I should say, because it's not a garden, is designed using this algorithm that I wanted to use to create empathy. And this idea of a piece of computer code that can be empathetic is really challenging. So I began working with a string theory physicist who thinks in a very rational way. And he said, well, of course, we can make an algorithm that calculates for empathy, but what is empathy? And that was really the starting point of thinking about what this artwork could be and what it could do. So I had to define it in a really rational way, which was to think about maximizing pollinator diversity. But before I'd even got to that point, when I was thinking about what does it mean to be an insect and enjoy art, which opens up so many questions about aesthetics and beauty and evolution, I began sort of contacting scientists who knew a lot more about this than I did, and also who maybe hadn't broached these questions from my perspective as an artist. So Lars Chitker, who's at Queen Mary's, University of London, he sticks radars on the backs of bumblebees to look at how they travel around landscapes, and also has just done work this year with bumblebees playing with balls to see if they play and if they have fun and if they can do things that don't have a food reward. And then I work with horticulturists at the Eden Project and beyond to start to think about what does a plant list look like for the algorithm to work with. So the algorithm is drawing from a database of plants that are all pollinator friendly, but each plant has been specifically chosen for the specific pollinators that visit it. So we were just looking at some of the foxgloves, which are in that bed behind you, and they suit long-tongued bumblebees. You know, the bumblebee has to work hard to get inside the flower, whereas there's daisies somewhere are very easy to access because the flower is sort of open. So we have specialists and generalists, and they start to form sort of the mass of flowers and differences between flowers and plants. I learnt from the beekeeper at the Eden Project why flowers bloom at different times of the year, which isn't something I knew. It's because their insect pollinators emerge at different times of the year. So you have what he described as these mutualistic pulses across landscapes as different flowers emerge and die over the cycle of the year. So sort of collating all of this information and all these conversations, which is the way I like to work, to have the opportunity to just ask people stuff, helped to form the structure of this project. So at the beginning, I had the idea for an algorithm to buffer myself from my own aesthetic choices, and then it starts to sort of map out all these collaborations. So that was the creation of the plant list and the algorithm. The algorithm is optimizing pollinator diversity. And then the other side is getting this in the ground. And the other gardens that were living artworks, I constantly have to correct myself because they're not gardens, because they're not for us. And I think we're going to talk a bit about what a garden is. Bringing this into the park is a collaboration between so many different people. And I never imagined that I would see curators from the Serpentine digging holes in the park, which was such a pleasurable part of this installation. But it's a relationship with the royal parks and doing something very different, moving beyond the gallery and making a work in public like this. We have dogs. There's a very well-behaved dog over there, but we have dogs jumping across the fence, there's squirrels, there's all sorts of other users of the park interacting with it. So it's a collaboration between people, plants, insects, but ultimately we're here to look after it.
Thank you. It's a very important point.